Let's talk about Mata Hari. It's Paul pronouncing Dutch words and names the way a Dutchman would pronounce them. Last week, I introduced you to the Dutch movie star Sylvia Christel, who played the role of Mata Hari in one of her many movies. And it wasn't the best movie about Mata Hari's life, but one of my viewers suggested that I should talk about Mata Hari because Mata Hari, believe it or not, was Dutch. Yes. Why would I otherwise talk about her? But Mata Hari was not her real name. She invented that name. It is an Indonesian name, and we'll talk about how she came to that name later. Anyway, her real name was, are you ready? Margaretha Geertruida Zelle. Margaretha Geertruida Zelle. But you know her as Mata Hari. Mata Hari was a girl with lots of ambition. Her dad's factory went bankrupt. He made hats. He was very rich. And her mother died at a young age. So she was all alone and had more in mind for her life than staying in the place where she was born, namely Friesland, which is one of the most northern provinces of the Netherlands. It's actually the province where I was born. And Mata Hari, or Greetje Zelle, actually lived in Sneek. That's the town, the actual town where I was born in. True fact, I have met one of her family members who was a minister who preached in the 80s and 90s, and I went to hear him preach in a church, and that's where I got to meet him. Anyway, that's my link to Mata Hari. Now, Greetje didn't want to stay in Friesland all by herself, and she answered an ad in the local paper where an army officer who was stationed in the Dutch East Indies, now known as Indonesia, was looking for a wife. Even though he was 21 years her senior, she said, well, this might be my ticket to get out of the Netherlands. And he had her shipped over to Indonesia. They got married, they had 2 kids, and he did not treat her very well. He was very abusive. He had a mistress on the side. He was an alcoholic. And that marriage ended. And she ended up fleeing to France and became the mistress of a French diplomat who suggested that she might make a good living, considering her striking looks, as an exotic dancer. And he said, you know what? You've lived so long in Indonesia. Why don't you come up with some Indonesian exotic dance that will wow the crowds? You know, that's something we don't have. That would be your unique selling point, your USP. And she said, wait a minute, that sounds like a good... I can do that, but I have to have this stage name. And that became Mata Hari, which means the eye of the day. And boy, did she hit it out of the park. She was the talk of the town of Paris. People had never seen anything like that because Mata Hari was not a very prudish girl. She was not very shy. She started off with some scarves and items of clothing, and as the dance progressed, she got rid of those items of clothing until she was just on stage wearing nothing but a brassiere. The talk of the town, a sensation. Everybody who was somebody wanted to talk to her, and she became the mistress and courtisane, as they call that, of many people, the rich and the famous and the politically involved. And this was in the time of the First World War. Now, because she was Dutch and the Netherlands was neutral in the First World War, she was able to travel freely from the warring countries without anybody making a big fuss about that. And the French regime said, you know what, this is a great opportunity. This woman knows everybody in high places because they couldn't get enough of her. Why don't we ask her to spy for us? Because she can meet up with these German officers and seduce them and have them tell her all their secrets so we can win the war. Now, the trouble was that France was not doing very well in the war and they needed a scapegoat. So they made it look like, the way it seems, as if she was kind of a double agent, that she not only spied for the French, but also spied for the Germans, because at some point the Germans paid her a lot of money, and she said that was just reimbursement for luggage that she lost on her journeys back and forth to France. She considered at that point France to be her home country. And she did what she wanted to do for her home country and helped them win the war. But like I said, the French were not doing very well. They were looking for a scapegoat, so they made it look like that very considerable payment that she received from the Germans was to thank her and pay her for her spy services as a double agent, which wasn't true at all. But there was a legal court case, and her lawyer had no chance to interview and scrutinize everybody and cross-examine everybody. It was cooked. And she was condemned to death. And at the age of 41, she was executed And the last thing she did was blow a kiss to the soldiers who fired on her. That is the tragic tale of Greetje Zelle, Gertruida Margaretha Zelle, also known as Mata Hari. See you next time. Tot ziens. Bye-bye.